Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends, and welcome to our weekly program on Allan Kardec's Genesis. We're studying the miracles, the whole entire miracle section, which is in the second half of Genesis. And we started in the last few weeks to talk about what miracles are, and are there any miracles, and does God perform miracles? And the answer is no. And last week, we studied the perispirit, which is our fluidic body. It is a subsection of the chapter under miracles, which is entitled Fluids. And today we will be going to page 289, dear friends, and we will be focusing on the action of spirits upon the fluids, fluidic creations, thought, photography. But before we go there, we will be recapping last week's session on the perispirit, because it's always so incredibly helpful when we can build one lesson on top of the other. And sometimes we don't remember what happened last week, or maybe we didn't attend. So let us go here. And also let me say hello to dear friends. I see a couple of people. So let us see. Share screen. All right. And we're going to slideshow. And now let me see whether you guys can actually see the presentation. Let me go to Facebook. It's always good to check. Kardec Radio. Here we go. Okay, looks like it's in good working order. All right, and please let me know if you can't see anything, even though I can't see your comments right now. Anyway, so dear friends, Genesis, the miracles, and we're talking about the chapter on fluids. Last week we talked about our fluidic body, namely the perispirit, which is the link between our soul and our physical body. It's linked molecule by molecule to each other. So what we learned is that the perispirit is a product of the universal cosmic fluid, which is the origin of everything in the universe. It has many different manifestations, from absolute fine matter to very coarse material emanations, creations. So UCF is Universal Cosmic Fluid. I abbreviated it. So the perispirit is a product of the Universal Cosmic Fluid. The compositional elements of the perispirit vary according to the different worlds. So the perispirit on Earth and around Earth is different in its consistency, in its ponderability, measurability, than, let's say, in a more evolved world or in a less evolved world. So the composition is not identical either among all the incarnate or discarnate spirits that are populating the Earth or its surrounding environments. So the perispirit is composed, its composition is not identical between you and I, or between you and another spirit. It's different. Every single spirit, even around Earth, its perispirit has a different composition. What is that dependent on? The nature of our fluidic envelope, of any spirit's fluidic envelope, namely the perispirit, depends on the spirit's degree of moral advancement. The more morally advanced a spirit is, the less dense the perispirit becomes. The less morally advanced a spirit is, the denser the perispirit is. So even within earth realms, the realm of earth, every single spirit has a different perispirit, depending on its moral development. And then we learned that the corporeal body, so our physical forms, are formed of identical elements, regardless of the spirit's purity. So you and my body are made out of the same identical elements. And it doesn't matter whether you are more advanced than I am. The perispirit of the same spirit, so my perispirit changes with its progress in each incarnation. Your perispirit changes from lifetime to lifetime. Why? Because hopefully we're morally developing, and consequently our perispirit adjusts. The more we advance, the less dense it becomes. So that was in a gist what we studied on the perispirit. And now let us go to page 289. If you like to follow along, it's in this edition. And again, it's entitled, the chapter is entitled, The Action of Spirits Upon the Fluids, the Fluidic Creations and Thought Photography. And we're now on item 13. The spiritual fluids, which comprise one of the states of the universal cosmic fluid, are properly stated the atmosphere for spirit beings. It is the element from which they draw the matter upon which they operate. So the spiritual fluids are the atmosphere for spirit beings. And that's not us. Those we're talking about discarnates. So their atmosphere is made out of fluids. It's spiritual fluids. And it is the element from which they draw the matter upon which they operate. So spirits draw the matter upon which they operate from the spiritual fluids. It is the environment where special phenomena occur. So the spiritual fluids is the environment where specific or spirit phenomena occur. Now let us rewind the tape a few weeks prior. We talked about miracles and that there aren't really any miracles since Spiritism came along, because Spiritism established new laws and explained phenomena, namely spirit phenomena, that were non-explainable before Spiritism came along. Consequently, they were labeled miracles, because anything that can't be explained is called a miracle, has been called a miracle in the past. So now when we see that the fluids are the atmosphere for spirit beings, and that it is the elements, it is the element from which the spirits draw upon in order to operate on the fluids. And it says it is the environment where special phenomena occur. Special phenomena occur. Right there, we're now touching on the explanation why there isn't really a miracle. Because spirits act on fluids. Now, it's not visible to our eyes, but it's visible to spirit eyes. So because it's not visible to our eyes, it was called a miracle because it wasn't explained. It couldn't be explained that spirits act on fluids and create things therewith. We're going to get there in a minute. So, the spiritual fluids is the environment where special phenomena occur, perceptible to the spirit sight and hearing, but beyond the corporeal senses, which are impressed solely by tangible matter. That's why certain phenomena, spirit phenomena, special phenomena, were called miracles, because we're not perceptible to our eyes, but they can be explained by laws. It is where that light, which is particular to the spirit world, is formed, and which is different from ordinary light through its causes and its effect. So it is within the spiritual fluids that the spirit light is formed as well. Finally, the spiritual fluids are the vehicle for thought. like the air is the vehicle for sound. So the spiritual fluids are the vehicle for thought. The spiritual fluids is the environment where spirit phenomena occur, imperceptible to us. The spiritual fluids are the source of spirit light. The spiritual fluids are the vehicle for thought. The spiritual fluids, the matter upon which spirits operate. It's matter to spirits. So, dear friends, hopefully we understood that. So now let us go and move on. The spiritual fluids are the atmosphere for spirit beings. We need to like download that. It's super important. Okay, let's go to item 14, page 290. Spirits act upon the spiritual fluids, but they do not manipulate them like humans manipulate gases. So spirits act on the spiritual fluids. We'll see in a minute how. But they don't manipulate the fluids like humans manipulate gases. We add one gas to another, or we create gases by pollution, greenhouse gases, and so we do a lot of things with gases. It's all part of chemistry, right? So what do the spirits do instead? Instead, the spirits use the help of what? How do spirits act on the spiritual fluids? This is really big. They do it through thought and will. Now, when we go, so spirits act on the spiritual fluids through thought and will. Now, when we go to Thought and Life by Emmanuel, the second chapter is on the will. First, in the first chapter, he says, the mind stands as the mirror of life. Why does he say that? Because as we think and feel, we emit those thoughts. We imprint them on the fluids, on the spiritual fluids. And as we emit, we attract them back. Law of attraction, law of affinity. And what controls our thinking? Our will. Because according to Emmanuel, the will is the CEO of all the departments in the brain. The will is in charge. Nothing happens without the will. If my will tells me to not get up in the morning, I won't get up. But if my will tells me I want to be God-centered in my life, in every action, I am connected to God, asking for permission, praying, looking for guidance. My will directed me in that. So it is interesting to see. And of course, ultimately, what leads us to understand is that the will needs to be educated, because an uneducated will may want to go to the bar every day, right? But once we're educated and we know what's important, thanks to Spiritism and many other studies, we can streamline our thinking. So spirits act on the spiritual fluids. They manipulate them. They do not manipulate them like humans manipulate gases. Spirits act on fluid with thought and their will. Via the will directs the thoughts. And they direct the spiritual fluids in this or that direction. All right. So this is super important. Thought and will are for spirits what hands are to humans. Wow. So we have hands, and with the hands we can do stuff. I pick up this phone, for example. So the thoughts and the will are for spirits what hands are to humans, because the will creates a thought and imprints it on the spiritual fluid. And that's how things happen. And that's also how miracles were created or labeled in the past, because it wasn't visible to anyone's eyes. By means of thought, the spirits impress upon the fluids this or that direction. They agglomerate, combine, or disperse the fluids. They alter their properties. So the spirits alter the spiritual fluids properties as a chemist alters gases or other substances. So spirits are like chemists. They alter the properties of the spiritual fluids depending on their thoughts, their will, whatever they want to create. If they want to create a walking stick, then they imprint that thought on the spiritual fluid and a walking stick will be created, for example. It is the great workshop or laboratory for the spirit life, the spiritual fluids. Sometimes these transformations are the result of intent. So sometimes a spirit wants to create a walking stick. It's a conscious intent. But now we're learning that, however, these transformations are the product of an unconscious, primarily the byproduct of an unconscious thought. So this is interesting, right? Because we are asked to become more aware of our thoughts. Because as we think, we imagine, that's how we attract. The mind stands as the mirror of life. Our life is a representation of our thinking. Because as we think, we imagine, and we attract back. Same thing happens with spirits. If the spirits, discarnates, or us are unconscious in what we're emanating, we don't always like what we see in our lives and what we experience, right? Because every thought is creative, co-creative with God. There's a book written, Thought are Things, literally. So spirits create, manipulate, and change the spiritual fluids through their thought and will, just like we humans do via our hands. Sometimes these thoughts are admitted consciously with intent, but most often these thoughts get admitted unconsciously and so then create unconscious images and situations. It is enough for a spirit to think about something in order for it to be produced. Wow. Just as it is enough for the spirit to intone a melody in order for it to resound in the atmosphere. So it is enough for a spirit to just think something, and boom, there it gets created. And the same is for a spirit to intone a melody, and then it resounds in the atmosphere. So it's instant. For example, so now we're getting some examples. This is how a spirit makes itself visible to an incarnate, endowed with psychic sight, appearing in the same form it had while alive at the time in which it was known, even if it has had many incarnations since then. So by employing the will to create thoughts of, okay, I want to look like in my previous incarnation. Let's imagine I'm a spirit, discarnate spirit, and I want to appear to my children the way I looked in my previous incarnation, in this incarnation. So now I'm envisioning myself, my thoughts, my will goes in that direction, and boom, I created my look, so to speak, my peri-spiritual look. This is how it works. And now a psychically inclined person can see me. And I'm discarnate. It presents itself, the spirit, it presents itself in the same clothing and with the same outward signs, infirmities, scars, amputated limbs, etc., that it had before. A beheaded person will appear without a head. This does not mean that it has retained such an appearance. Certainly not. For as a spirit, it is not lame, maimed, cross-eyed, or headless. No. But going back in thought to the time in which it had been this way, its peri-spirit instantly takes on the appearance, just as it will instantly drop it the moment the thought ceases. So this is interesting. So as a spirit, we may think back to the last incarnation in order to show ourselves to our incarnate friends and family members. But the appearance, the peri-spiritual appearance that was created through our thought under the auspices of our will only exists as long as this thought endures. The minute the thought is dropped, boom, that appearance disappeared. And of course, we can go back 100 lifetimes. We can go back 2 lifetimes. We can create anything, really. Hence, if it had been black at one time and then white at another, it will present itself either as black or white, depending on which of the 2 incarnations for it is being evoked, and to which it goes back in thought. So just what we said. It depends on how the spirit wants to show itself. It can, just through thoughts. So spirit's thoughts are enough to produce something or intone a melody. So this is how spirits make themselves visible. Spirits go back in thought. Its perispirit instantly takes on the appearance of this lifetime that they are envisioning. The appearance drops as soon as the thought ceases. The same mechanism is for objects. So all creations of the spirits come from their thought. So, let's see, where were we? Through a similar effect, the spirit's thought fluidically creates the objects that it had the habit of using. A miser will finger gold. A soldier will bear arms and wear a uniform. A smoker will use a pipe or a cigarette. A laborer will have his plow and cattle. And an old woman her distaff. Such fluidic objects are as real to the spirit, who is also fluidic, as they are in the material state to the live individual. However, since they are creations of its thought, the existence is as fleeting as the thought itself. So this is important. Whatever is being created via the thought, which gets imprinted like a picture into the spiritual fluid, only lasts as long as the thought lasts. Let us go forward. All right, so now we're going to item 15, page 291. Since the fluids are the vehicle for thought, thought acts upon the fluids as sound acts upon the air. So we'll say that again. Since the fluids are the vehicle for thought, thought acts upon the fluids just as sound acts upon the air. So I start singing da 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 da. This is carried via the air to you, to this microphone, and then to your ears. Well, the same happens with thoughts, but it doesn't go through the air. It gets imprinted into the spiritual fluids. That's the difference. So the fluids are the vehicle for our thoughts, and the fluids bring thought to us just as air brings sound to us. One could truthfully state, therefore, that in these fluids, these spiritual fluids, there are waves and rays of thought that crisscross one another without mixing, just as in the air there are sound waves and rays. So when we have 2 different music programs running, they are crisscrossing in the air, right? Sometimes they seem they're matched, they're mold into each other, but they are ultimately separate. They're occupying different airwaves, so to speak. Same with the thinking, with our thoughts. So our thoughts get imprinted into the spiritual fluids, but there's different thought waves. They're crisscrossing all over. It's like a gigantic web. It's like when André Louise describes when he comes closer with his followers of spirits, when they come closer to the earth crust. And he asked in several books, what is this dark, foggy, thick substance that's surrounding everything? And that's then when the mentors explained to him that those are thought emanations. They create, when they're dark, and lower vibrational, like a dark, foggy situation. It's very interesting. And of course, the opposite is true too. If we align our thinking with God, right? When we raise ourselves up to higher worlds and connect with Jesus and God. There is more, Alan Kardec says. As thought creates fluidic images, it is reflected in the perispiritual envelope as in a mirror. There it takes on a body and photographs itself somehow. Wow. So now we're understanding when André Louis says that we're carrying nodules in our perispirit from thought forms, from wrongs we've committed, which of course all begin with thinking and feeling. And they imprint themselves in our perispirit, and we take them from lifetime to lifetime, and they predispose us to illnesses. For example, that's one form. So thought creates fluidic images, which are reflected in our perispirit, just as in a mirror. So when I try to hint perfume to you, and you accept the perfume, are you the only one who is smelling of perfume? No. Because when I have this here in my hand, unless it's in a bottle, but let's say I have a puddle of perfume here in my hands, and I give it to you, of course my hand will be smelling of perfume too. And that is just like with our thoughts. Our thoughts that create images in the spiritual fluids, they hit us first. They imprint themselves in us first. And this is what they're describing here. Thought creates fluidic images which are reflected in our perispirit, just as in a mirror. So we can't escape our thoughts and our feelings ever. That's why we always learn in the literature, and the spiritist literature, that whatever we do to others, we do to ourselves first, starting from our thinking, from our feeling. Our words and our actions always goes here first. All right, let us continue, friends. So, suppose that a certain man, for example, gets the idea to kill another. As impassive as his physical body may be, his fluidic body goes into action by means of the thought, which reproduces all the nuances. This is very interesting, right? So if we think about murdering someone, our perispirit goes to action, and it reproduces all the nuances of this murder. It fluidically executes the motion. Fluidically, it executes the motion, the act that he has the desire to accomplish. The thought creates the image of the victim. The thought creates the image of the victim, and the entire scenario is painted like a picture, just as it exists in his mind. Wow, that's very intense. And we can only imagine what impact that has, not only on the spirit who thinks that thought and creates that vision, but also it reaches the victim, the one it is directed to. This is how we create images. That would be a seed, a negative seed that we're planting in our garden of eternity, because nothing goes unnoticed and nothing is not a seed. So everything is a seed. Boom. We put that seed in the garden, in our own garden of eternity, and then we're surprised that at some point we have a lot of hardship in our lives, because maybe we're having constantly those thoughts, or we're even acting it out. This is how we indebt ourselves. But of course, the opposite is true always too. Alan Kardec just brings those examples, but it also shows to us how beautiful, how co-creatively beautiful we can be, because we can have thoughts that are just so loving and caring. They're so supportive and encouraging and indulgent and understanding. Understanding is so important. Loving, forgiving, benevolent. All those create fluidic images as well, and they help us. They are our advocates in our future. Those are the seeds that will nourish us with beautiful fruits and vegetables in the future. So let us continue. This is how the most secret movements of the soul reverberate in the fluidic envelope. See, that's why we think what happens between our two ears is our own domain. It's our secret spot, and nobody is allowed to monkey with that. It's our freedom zone. Yes, we are free to think. We have absolute freedom to think, and we have free will. But we are living the consequences of our own thinking if it's not aligned to God with God's will. Law of cause and effect. So this is how the most secret movements of the soul reverberate in the fluidic envelope, which is our perispirit. How one soul can read another soul, like a book, and see what is imperceptible to the body's eyes. So no wonder that some psychics can read our thoughts. They see the fluidic envelope images that we have created that are swirling around, and they can't see them unless they exist. However, in seeing the intent, the soul can foresee the fulfillment of the act that will result from it. In seeing the intent, the soul can foresee the fulfillment of the act that will result from it. So the intent is enough. And when we're discarnated, we can read each other's thoughts like that because they're literally images, like paintings would carry around. Must be so amazing. I wish I could just experience it. And I know we have, but I don't have any recollections of it. So that's how one soul can read another. But some of us can also do it some more than others while we're incarnated. But the soul cannot determine the moment when this will be fulfilled, ascertain the details, or even affirm that it will actually occur, since ulterior circumstances may modify the plans and change the dispositions. So they can see the fluidic imprints, but cannot say whether it will happen, when it will happen, if it will happen. And that is interesting also because, when spirits forecast events, they don't usually give us exact times, right? The spirit cannot see what is not yet in the thought. So the soul, the spirit, even the psychic, cannot see what is not yet in our thoughts. What it does see is the habitual preoccupation of the individual, his or her desires, his or her plans, and good or evil intentions. And those are absolutely an open book for everyone who can tune in. Once we're in the spirit world, much more easily. And of course, none of it is hidden from God. So it is through these spirit images that imprint themselves in the spiritual fluid that the most secret soul movements reverberate in the perispirit. Because whatever we're thinking gets imprinted in the spiritual fluid, but as it gets projected out, it gets reflected back here. So it lives in here. We're doing it to ourselves, both positive and negative. And this is how one soul can read another, foresee fulfillments of acts. But the details, the timelines, and confirmation of occurrences cannot be determined. Another soul cannot see what is not yet in thought form, because there's no image. It hasn't been created in the spiritual fluid yet. But what can be seen is the habitual preoccupations of us or of a spirit, our desires, plans, good and evil intentions. So, dear friends, that completes our session for today. Yay, this is very interesting, isn't it? And it kind of, let us keep it in mind that these are the building blocks that will help us understand why there are no miracles, because we can see it can be all explained. And understanding our perispirit, the functions of the fluids, which of course are a derivative of the universal cosmic fluid, will help us understand later on when we go deeper into the study of the actual miracles, so-called miracles that Jesus performed. Now let me let me get out of here, and then I can see whether anyone had any questions. Yay, I see Teresa. Hi, my dear friend. So nice to have you here. Tony, lovely. Thank you, Tony. And there is Kardec Radio. We see you. Narciso, thank you, friends, for joining. It's a pleasure. So I see there nobody has a question. And if that's the case, then what we will do is do a closing prayer. Let us thank God for this beautiful information, this absolutely groundbreaking information that we're receiving, which altered the world. I mean, if we look at the repercussion of understanding the fluids and thought, it changed the world. Because before Spiritism came along, so much was labeled a miracle. All right, so let us see, where are we here? Okay. So we invite you to close your eyes. And yes, if you can close your eyes and find a comfortable position. And if you can, let us feel our feet on the ground, saying hello to Mother Earth that so lovingly sustains us, supports us, allows us to dwell here. And hopefully we take care of her too. Hopefully we give back to her as much as we're invited to give back to our brothers and sisters, rather than just taking. Thank you, Mother Earth, for your patience with us, your love and kindness. Now let us connect with our hearts. Let us feel a beautiful heartbeat in our chest. This amazing heart that keeps us alive, literally, keeps our blood moving, distributing the nutrients, oxygen. And it's also the heart that we want to connect with God and Jesus and the good spirits. And let us say hello to God, to Jesus, to the mentors, to Allan Kardec, from our minds, balancing, however, our hearts as well, feeling the greatness, the vastness of this universe, feeling the gratitude for the teachings that open worlds to us, helping us understand how the mechanisms work, at least partly as far as the spirits divulge them to us. Also helping us to understand where we came from, why we are here, and where we are going in the future. Helping us understand the importance of our moral transformation, which will have an immediate impact on the quality of our perispirit. And in equal importance on the seeds that we're planting in our lovely garden of eternity, which we are daily pulling weeds out from and planting loving, kind, indulging, benevolent, understanding, patient, forgiving new seeds that will help us to reap a wonderfully loving, caring, nourishing harvest in the future. And now let us for a moment reach out in thought to our brothers and sisters in need, that are more in need than we are. Let us ask God and the good spirits to please whisper consoling thoughts, ideas into their minds and ears, helping them in carrying their cross and helping them to plant more caring and loving seeds as well. And let us also pray for our politicians, our political leaders, the president, the presidents of the different countries in this world. And we're praying that they will be able to hear God's guidance, Jesus' love and care, transmuting them into care for all the people that they're ruling over. Thank you, God. Thank you for your love, your mercy, and your justice. And also, thank you for these incredible teachings tonight. And so, God willing, we will be meeting again next week with the next study of Genesis by Allan Kardec. Thank you, and so be it. Thank you, dear friends. So next week, let's see what we're going to do. Let's give it a sneak preview. We will be talking about the qualities of the fluids. This will be a very interesting chapter, also touching on disease. So healing and disease. That will be very important for all of us. Thank you for joining, and God bless you.